Welcome to Stories for Wonderful Children. I'm Dan Wendelin, your host and storyteller. Years ago, I began recording the bedtime stories I told my children every night. Now, we would like to share those stories with you. I hope you enjoy my Stories for Wonderful Children. There's a little girl named Winella, and she lives in a very special house full of many special rooms. But on this particular day that I'm going to tell you about, Winella was not in her very special house. She was instead in her very special backyard, enjoying a beautiful, warm, sunny day.
D-A-Y.
That's right. She was playing out in the backyard. She was playing with Joey. She had been out in the backyard, and she'd been playing with Joey. She had a frisbee, and she was throwing the frisbee up into the air, and Joey was flying in the air above her, and he would catch it in his beak, and then he would fly to another part of the yard, and he would drop it so that it would fall, and she would have to run to catch it before it hit the ground. They had a name for their game. They called it Birdbee. Birdbee, and they had made it up themselves, and they liked it very much. Well, they'd been playing Birdbee for a few minutes, when suddenly Winella heard a noise behind her, and she turned, and there, standing on the Catspaw Highway, was a fairy she did not recognize. The fairy was dressed in shimmering clothes that seemed to shift from one color to the next, and Winella, as she walked over to greet her, noticed that she looked worried. She was looking around behind her, and she seemed to be out of breath. Winella said, "Hello?" And the fairy said, "Oh, hello. Who are you? Are you she?" And Winella said, "Well, I'm Winella." The fairy said, "Oh, thank goodness. I found you at last. The fairies told me that I should find you, that you would be the one who'd be the guardian." Winella said, well, I know the fairies, but I'm sorry, I don't know what you're talking about." And the fairy said, "Well, my name is Centessa, and I was the last guardian, but Jack Frost has found me, and so I must pass it on before he captures it." And Winella says, What? He captures? Centessa said, "I cannot tell you right now. I have to pass it on and then go. They'll continue chasing me, and you'll have a chance to hide it." And then she reached into a pouch on her belt, and she drew out a seed. It was the most remarkable seed that Winella had ever seen. As Centessa poured it into Winella's hands, Winella could feel that it sort of had a warmth about it, and it was a seed about the size of a watermelon seed, but it was very dark black. It was a black that was sort of glossy and had sort of a brown overtone to it. When you held it up to the sun, it almost sort of had a brown warmth. Winella said, "Well, I'll do my best to take care of it. Can't you tell me anything?" And Centessa said, "No, I must go. Goodbye." And she turned to the Catspaw Highway and disappeared. Winella stood there for a moment looking down at the seed, sort of wondering what it was that had come to her, and what it was she was a guardian of, and why it was that Jack Frost wanted it so much. After thinking about it for a moment, she thought that probably the best way to discover the answers to those questions was to use the Catspaw Highway and go back to Fairyland. But it also occurred to her that if Jack Frost was looking for this seed, taking it to Fairyland might not be the best idea. So she put it in her pocket, and she called Joey down, and he circled down, and she said, "Joey, we need to find someplace safe to put this seed until we can find out what's going on with it." So she climbed onto Joey's back, and she whispered into his ear where it was they were going, and he flew up, up, up. And just as they were about to fly out of the neighborhood, Winella remembered that she had not told her mommy that she was leaving, and that was a bad idea. So she had Joey circle back down, and he landed on the roof. And as he landed on the roof, Winella looked down, and she saw, just hopping off the Cat's Paw Highway, 2 of Jack Frost's goblins. Winella opened the door from the roof, and she shouted, "Mom!" And her mother yelled, "Yes, Winella?" She said, 2 things. "I'm going someplace with Joey, and there are some goblins in the backyard. Could you call the fish police and get rid of them?" Her mom said, "Sure." Winella hopped back on Joey's back, and he launched off the roof up into the air. And as he began to fly out of the neighborhood, Winella looked back into her own backyard, and she saw that her mommy had not called the fish police as far as she could tell, but instead her mommy appeared to have gone up to her room and gotten Winella's amazing machine, and as Winella watched, her mommy pushed a button on the machine, and the machine went charging towards the goblins and chased them right back onto the Cat's Paw Highway. Winella grinned to herself. She knew that her mommy could more than take care of a couple goblins. So they flew on, up through the clouds. And then they went very fast. And then they did a loop-de-loop. And then they did a barrel roll. And then they were going down through the clouds. And as they descended through the clouds, Winella felt the familiar feeling of cotton candy sliding along her skin. And then they were going down into a circle of mountains with a green land in the middle. And soon they were landing at the mouth of a cave. And when Winella stepped to the entrance of the cave, she yelled, "Hello, hello, hello. Chocolate bat, bat. Are you in there? She heard a rustling noise, and a moment later the chocolate bat came out and landed. He said, "Well, Winella, it's been quite some time since I've seen you. How have you been?" Winella said, "I've been very nice, chocolate bat, but I have something, an unusual request. First I have a question. Are there any goblins ever in Candyland?" The chocolate bat said, let me think. "I think once, a very long time ago, one goblin came here, but the gingerbread men chased him off, and there haven't been any come back since then." Winella said, "Oh, well, that's perfect." She said, "I have something, and a fairly powerful ice wizard named Jack Frost is looking for it, and I'm supposed to keep it safe. And I don't know really what it is or why it needs kept safe or why he wants it. But I'd like to hide it here while I try to discover what it is that it is and why it needs kept safe." And Chocolate Bat said, "Well, sure, follow me." And so Winella followed him back into his cave. It got darker and darker and darker, and they went around the first turn down into the cave. And it was really getting so dark that Winella couldn't see very well. And she said, "Chocolate Bat?" And he said, "Yes." And he was right next to her, and she couldn't see him at all. And she said, "I can't tell where I'm going." And he said, "Oh, yes, I forgot. You can't tell your way by squeaking like I can in the dark." He said, "Here, put your hand on my wing, and I'll lead the way." And so she reached out, and she put her hand on his warm, smooth, chocolatey wing, and she followed him as he led her deeper and deeper into the cave. And at last he stopped, and he said,
"Why hasn't the chocolate bat melted? He's made out of chocolate."
"He's made out of magical chocolate."
Oh.
And he stopped, and she heard him moving a big chocolate rock aside, and he said, "Here." And she knelt down, and she felt that there was sort of this little hollow in the rock. And she took the seed out of her pocket, and she put it in the hollow, and then she helped him roll the big chocolate rock back across it. She said, "Thank you, Chocolate Bat." He said, "Don't worry. I'll keep an eye on it, and I'll let the gingerbread men know that they need to be doubly careful about making sure no goblins get in to Candyland." And then Winella went out, and she got on Joey's back, and they flew up out of Candyland, through the clouds, and they did a barrel roll and a loop-de-loop, and they went very fast. And then they landed in the city on the first Cat's Paw Highway they could see from the air, and they got on, turning around 3 times, saying, "Cat's Paw Highway, Cat's Paw Highway, Cat's Paw Highway, take me where I want to go." And as soon as they stepped off the Cat's Paw Highway, they were surrounded by goblins. And the goblins said, "Get 'em!" and they zapped them with their wands, and Joey and Winella found that they couldn't move. And then the goblins went, and they patted Joey down, and they patted Winella down like they were looking for something. And after a minute, they emptied out Winella's pockets, and they found a string, and they found her magnifying glass, and they found her rubber ball, and they left all those things at the ground. They said, she doesn't have it. I wonder where Centessa hid it. And then they all stomped off. Winella and Joey kind of worked their way out of the ice that the goblins had put them in. And Winella said, wow, I'm glad that worked out well. Not wanting to say anything more because she wasn't sure if there might still be goblins around. Joey just nodded. And they decided it would probably be safer to fly the rest of the way to the fairy castle. Winella got on Joey's back and they flew the rest of the way to the castle. They went into the castle and Winella told her story. And as soon as she got to the part where Centessa showed up, the fairies all went, the guardian. And when Winella told them about how Centessa had given her a seed, the fairies all went, oh. And then when she finished her story, she started to talk about where she'd taken the seed, but the fairy said, no, tell no one. The fewer people know where it is hidden, the less chance that Jack Frost could capture someone who knows and find out. She said, here is what you must know. Jack Frost has not always lived in Fairyland. Once upon a time, he lived someplace else. And there was a tree in Rainbow Fairyland that kept anyone with evil magic from entering the land. Well, long, long ago, we had a very foolish queen of Fairyland, and she decided that she wanted a new wand, and she wanted the most powerful wand in the world. And she decided that in order to have this powerful wand, it should be made from the wood of the tree that guarded Fairyland. Because she figured that once she had that powerful wand, she could guard Fairyland, and we would have no need of the tree. So, she had it chopped down, and she had her wand made from it. The wand was called Everest, and it was indeed a mighty and powerful wand, and she was the most powerful queen of all fairies for a long, long time. But then, one day, she was traveling outside of Fairyland, and while she was traveling outside of Fairyland, she was fooled by Jack Frost and his goblins, and led into a trap, and there they defeated her and got her wand from her. And now, that powerful, powerful wand, Everest, is Jack Frost's wand. And because it is so powerful, it is what allows him to resist the magic of all the other fairies and remain here in Fairyland, where we must always be on our guard against him. Winella said, that's terrible. That's terrible. And so he will always be here? Well, the fairy that the queen sent for to cut down the tree and make Everest, that fairy, before she cut down the tree, she took a single seed from it. That seed is named Warm, and Warm is our hope, because we know, the garden fairy told us, the seed must be kept safe, because as long as it is kept safe, we have hope that one day one of its guardians will find a place to plant the seed, and it will grow into a new tree. We cannot plant it here, because the tree will never grow again in the soil of a land that allowed it to be cut down. So it must be planted someplace else, and then after it has grown, we must ask the tree to make us a new wand from its branches, and that wand will allow us to defeat Jack Frost so that he will no longer trouble our land. Oh, said Winella. You are our hope, Winella. You are now the seed's guardian. Jack Frost will be looking for it, and you too must search. Winella said, Search? Search for what? I know where it is. No, Winella, you must search for where you can plant it, so that our worm may once again become a tree, and so that we may still have hope. Will you do this for us, Winella? Will you take this quest? Winella thought about it for a moment. She said, I will. And that is the end of the story for tonight.
Oh, that's a long one.
Thanks for listening to Stories for Wonderful Children. I created today's story, but questions and witty commentary were supplied by my children. The music was created by Brandon Thompson. If you enjoy the show, please tell someone about it or leave a review on your podcast provider. Our website is storiesforwonderfulchildren.com, and you can also find us on most social media. I'm Dan Wendelin, reminding you to tell someone you love a story.